Today, we're counting down 13 weird facts you didn't know about Columbo. And from the moment it first aired in 1968, it didn't just entertain people, it changed how we watch television. The killer was always shown up front. The fun was never whodunit. It was how does he catch them? If this kind of deep dive into the shows that shaped us is your thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because there's a whole lot more where this came from, and you don't want to miss it. Number 13, the show that almost never had a name. Here's something that'll make you look at that opening title card differently. When the character of Columbo was first being developed for television in the late 1960s, the name Columbo almost didn't make it to the screen. The character originated in a 1960 teleplay called Enough Rope, where he was already a shambling, deceptively clever detective, but the creative team behind the show debated for a surprisingly long time about whether to use his last name as the title at all. Some executives thought a one-word surname title sounded too ethnic, too unusual, too risky for a mainstream American audience. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. Because, can you imagine sitting down every week to watch The Detective? No, neither can we. Number 12. Peter Falk wasn't the first choice. This one stings a little if you love Peter Falk, which, let's be serious, everyone does. But when the role of Lieutenant Columbo was being cast for the full television series, Falk was not the automatic choice. Bing Crosby, yes, that Bing Crosby, the singer, the movie star, the living legend, was actually offered the role first. Crosby turned it down because he didn't want the commitment of a television series. He famously preferred his golf schedule. Now, no disrespect to Bing, but the idea of him shuffling around asking killers just one more thing is genuinely hard to picture. Peter Falk, once he got the part, made Columbo so completely his own that it's almost impossible to imagine anyone else. Number 11, that I was real. If you ever noticed that Lieutenant Columbo seemed to have something just slightly off about his left eye, a kind of stillness, a glassiness you weren't imagining things, and it wasn't a makeup trick. Peter Falk had his left eye surgically removed when he was just 3 years old due to retinoblastoma, a form of eye cancer. He wore a glass eye for the rest of his life. Rather than hiding it or making it a source of anxiety, Falk simply incorporated it into his naturalistic acting style. There's actually a fun story that during one particularly tense interrogation scene, Falk popped out his glass eye and placed it on the table just to unnerve a guest actor. Whether that's entirely true or a set legend, it perfectly captures who Peter Falk was. Number 10, the raincoat had a life of its own. That coat, that glorious, destroyed, absolutely disgraceful raincoat. It became one of the most iconic costumes in television history, and the story of how it got there is wonderfully unglamorous. Peter Falk actually went out and bought the coat himself, secondhand, for something like $15. He wanted Columbo to look lived in, authentic, like a man who genuinely didn't care what anyone thought of his appearance. The wardrobe department reportedly tried on multiple occasions to replace it with something cleaner, something more presentable. Falk refused. As the show went on and the coat became more famous, it was preserved with increasing care, though it still looked like it had been left in a parking structure for a decade. That was entirely the point. Number 9. The dog wasn't in the script. One of the most charming recurring elements of the entire Columbo series is the lieutenant's basset hound, simply known as Dog. Shaggy's deeply unimpressed by everything, basically a canine version of Columbo himself. But here's the thing. The dog was never part of the original concept. Peter Falk brought the idea to the producers himself, arguing that a dog would make Columbo feel more human, more eccentric, more real. The producers were skeptical. A slobbery basset hound wandering through upscale crime scenes didn't exactly scream sophistication, but Falk pushed for it, and the dog became one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. Dog never solved a crime. Dog barely stayed awake, and audiences adored every second of it. Number 8. It came from the stage, not Hollywood. A lot of people assume Columbo was born as a TV concept, something cooked up in a studio meeting, but the character actually has theatrical roots. Columbo first appeared in a stage play called Prescription Murder, written by Richard Levinson and William Link, which ran on Broadway in 1962. The play starred Thomas Mitchell as Columbo, a completely different physical interpretation of the character, older, more traditionally authoritative. Then, it was adapted into a 1968 television movie, also called Prescription Murder, which served as Columbo's television debut and starred Peter Falk for the first time. It's rare for a character to travel from live theater all the way to a decades-long television institution. Columbo managed it, and he did it in that coat, number 7. Killer always knew, and that was revolutionary. Here's something that sounds simple but was actually a radical departure from everything television crime drama had ever done before. Columbo invented, or at least perfected, what's now called the inverted detective story. From the very first scene of every episode, you watched the murderer commit the crime. You knew exactly who did it, how they did it, and why. There was no mystery in the traditional sense. The entire dramatic engine of the show ran on watching Columbo slowly, politely, inexorably tighten the trap. In 1968, this was genuinely strange. Networks were nervous. Audiences were puzzled at first. Then they were hooked. The format influenced decades of television that followed. And you can draw a straight line from Columbo's structure to countless modern procedurals. Number 6. Guest. Stars used it as a prestige playground. By the 1970s, appearing as Columbo's Murderer of the Week had become something of a badge of honor in Hollywood. The guest villain role was a genuine acting showcase. You got to be charming, intelligent, confident, and ultimately undone by a man in a dirty coat. The list of actors who cycled through is extraordinary. Johnny Cash, Leonard Nimoy, Janet Leigh. Robert Culp appeared 4 times as different killers, which has to be some kind of record for cheerful fictional murderers. Patrick McGoohan won 2 Emmy Awards for his Columbo appearances as a guest star, not a series regular. To Emmys for being the bad guy. That tells you everything about the quality of writing and acting. Number 5. The "just one more thing" line was almost cut. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most recognized catchphrases in American television history. Just one more thing. That gentle pivot back toward the door. That seemingly harmless final question that always turned out to be the one that cracked everything open. And according to people who worked on the show, network executives and even some writers were skeptical about leaning into it too heavily. There was genuine concern that the repeated use of the phrase would start to feel like a crutch, a joke, something audiences would roll their eyes at. Peter Falk disagreed. He understood instinctively that the repetition was the point, that audiences weren't groaning when they heard it. They were leaning forward. He was right. The phrase outlived the show by decades. Number 4. Peter Falk. Had to fight for the role twice. You'd think that once Peter Falk was cast as Columbo, that was that. But the road was bumpier than it looked. When the show transitioned from the original 1968 TV movie toward becoming a proper series, there was a period of studio negotiation during which Falk's continued involvement was genuinely uncertain. Contract disputes, scheduling conflicts, differing visions for the character's direction, the machinery of Hollywood doing what it always does. At one point, the production was far enough along in discussing alternatives that other actors were being quietly considered for the role. Falk, to his enormous credit, held firm on his vision for who Columbo was. The fact that he won that negotiation is why the show became a classic instead of a footnote. Number 3. The show inspired real detectives. This one crosses the line from entertainment into something genuinely fascinating. Over the years, a number of real-world law enforcement professionals, detectives, investigators, interrogators have cited Columbo as an actual influence on their professional techniques. Not in a silly, imitative way, but the show's central interrogation philosophy, asking seemingly casual questions, letting a suspect underestimate you, circling back to the one detail that doesn't quite fit. These are recognized psychological and investigative strategies. Several criminology courses have reportedly used Columbo episodes as case studies in interview technique. A fictional television detective, conceived by 2 television writers and embodied by a man with a secondhand raincoat, ended up influencing real police work. That's a legacy most shows never get close to. Number 2, it was canceled, then became a classic. Here's the part of the story that should probably make everyone in the television industry feel a little humble. Columbo, as a regular series, did not run in a continuous, triumphant, uninterrupted stream. The original NBC run ended in 1978. The show was not dramatically canceled under scandalous circumstances, but it was set aside, deemed to have run its course, its time considered past. Then, in 1989, over a decade later, ABC brought it back, and it ran for another 13 years. Peter Falk was still in the raincoat, still asking one more thing. Audiences who had grown up with the show came back, and new viewers discovered it for the first time. The revival era produced some of the most acclaimed episodes in the entire series. Not bad for a show that had supposedly had its day. Number 1. Columbo. Never says his first name on screen. Save the best for last, as they say. And this is the kind of fact that, once you know it, you'll spend the rest of your life half hoping someone on the show finally breaks the rule. In all of Columbo's television appearances across the original series, the revival, the TV movies, every single episode, Lieutenant Columbo's first name is never spoken aloud on screen. Not once. We know from his police badge, glimpsed briefly in one episode, that the first initial appears to be F'd. Various official materials over the years have suggested the name Frank or Philip. But the show itself never commits. It's a deliberate choice, a piece of mystique that the writers and Falk himself protected fiercely. In a show built on the slow revelation of truth, Columbo kept one thing permanently to himself. And somehow, that feels exactly right. And that's our 13. Drop your favorite fact in the comments. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you down the road.